Hi students, this is Mrs. Morgan. After this lesson you will be able to solve quadratics by completing the square. We're going to start with perfect square trinomials. A perfect square trinomial is a trinomial of the form x squared plus bx plus c, where b is twice the square root of c. So for example, x squared plus 8x plus 16, our 8x is double the positive square root of 16. Another example is x squared minus 6x plus 9, because the negative 6 is double the negative square root of 9. And the other thing that I want to draw your attention to is that I can factor these and write x squared plus 8x plus 16 as x plus 4 squared. And x squared minus 6x plus 9 as x minus 3 squared. If I factor this out, well, distribute this out, I have x squared plus 4x plus 4x plus 16, which simplifies to our x squared plus 8x plus 16. We're going to find the value of c that makes each trinomial a perfect square. So the first thing we're going to do is divide b by 2. So I'm going to divide negative 12x by 2, which is negative 6. And then I square that. Negative 6 squared is 36. So that would be my value for c. X squared plus 9x plus c, it's just that sometimes you may want to write as a fraction. So 9 divided by 2 is 9 over 2. And then when we square that, we just square the top and then we square the bottom. We're going to solve by completing the square. We're going to round to the nearest tenth if necessary. We begin by subtracting 5 from both sides and make sure that we leave this space open. Then, since 6 divided by 2 and square that is 9, we're going to add 9 to both sides. Then we're going to factor this down, kind of like we did in that first slide. We're going to write it as x plus 3 squared equals 16. What I can do then is take the square root of each side and I'm going to solve for the positive and the negative square root. So here is my positive square root and my negative square root. And when I solve that down, I have x equals 1 and x equals negative 7. And the order is not important. You could also go negative 7, excuse me, 1. We're going to solve by completing the square again. We're going to round to the nearest tenth if necessary. This problem is a bit more involved. So the first thing that we're going to do on both sides is we're going to add 1 and leave that space. The next thing we're going to do is divide everything by 8, and we're going to make sure that we leave things in fraction form in this middle term. So we divide by 8, and what that gives us is t squared minus 3 over 2t, and again we're leaving that space, equals 1/8. Next, we're going to divide this negative 3 over 2 by 2, or multiply it by 1/2. And we're going to square it. So I take that negative 3 over 2 and I multiply it by half, and I get negative 3/4. And then when I square it, I get 9 over 16. So I'm going to add 9 over 16 to both sides. And when I add 9 over 16 on the right hand side, a decimal here is okay. We are going to next factor this side. When I square root 9 over 16, it's square root 9 over square root 16. So that's where our 3/4 comes from. And we just take the square root of, we've factored. Then we're going to take the square root of both sides. And for this square root, we're going to go ahead and round to the nearest tenth. So what we have is our positive square root and our negative square root. And I went ahead and changed this to a decimal just to make it easier for us. And we'll solve that down. And our first answers are 1.55 and negative 0.05, but it does say round to the nearest tenth. So if we would like to round to the nearest tenth, we would have 1.6 or negative 0.1 for our final answer. I know this is pretty intricate. We'll make sure that we go over it more in class as well.